So how have you guys experienced chasing this perfection? And really, it's a two-question thing, but it all goes into one. How have you experienced it and learned in all of this to release yourself from the burden of this consistent perfection? There's the exciting of the perfection, and then there's the releasing of whatever, maybe not, because this would be a perfect thing for a 6'2" profile. So how have you experienced the chasing of it and then the releasing of it and the recognition of it is not needed until it is? I would like to ask the reflector. I would like to ask Tom and Jason to answer first, or at least to start the thing rolling.
Go ahead, Tom. Go for it.
Well, I find also I have the 22 in detriment. So, and I have, as a 6 line, I actually have a lot of 1 lines in my gates. So I feel like I need to have a lot of foundation. So I kind of feel like I never do know enough. So I chase perfection. And when I feel like I'm not perfect, then like there's this shame that, that I don't know enough. And that's usually validated once I get out into spaces and seen. And then people are like, you really know enough, but it doesn't feel that way. It really doesn't in my head. And I have the 6447 abstract. Really, like, as much knowledge as I take in, it doesn't feel correct to focus on such minute details. So everybody's got all these specific gates and specific things that they know. And when I get into spots where I don't know it all, it makes me feel like, oh, you don't know anything. These people know way more than you. But it's really not true. Like, my mind just works in such a different way where it's like pattern recognition. And it's like I just have an obscene amount of data and it just doesn't filter through in that type of way. So I really just learned to like let go and not look at myself. And it's really true, like the waiting for the invitation, because when I'm recognized and seen by others, then none of that matters. Then it just flows out.
It's been a problem my whole life, that perfectionism. It's very, very hard to let go, almost to the point that I get to a place of inaction because I'm so worried about not doing it right. And it's a detriment. I almost have to have arbitrary deadlines and pressure, and like, this just has to happen. So I'm my own worst enemy. When I had web clients and they had a deadline, I once spent 8 hours agonizing over the color of blue because I thought it needed to be perfect. I went through so many shades that day and I was like, what the heck am I doing? So the clients drove the deadline. And now that I'm working for myself more, it's hard because, I just push something to the next day because I'm like, oh, it's not perfect, But, that phrase, good enough is perfect. I have to repeat that over and over again, especially, if you're going to get anything done. So it has been a real problem. It's something I'd like to let go of more, I think, and I'm trying to. I almost need somebody else to tell me it's okay to let go of it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So do the other 3 of you experience that also, or are you immune to this perfectionist tendency?
I definitely feel it for sure. With a lot of things. I don't know if it's also my trajectory, like your storylines. Mine is novice master. So I think I channel it into like kind of developing a system when I'm in that space where things like aren't perfect with whatever I'm doing. Like, it usually just keeps expanding and making it more imperfect. But I try to take away like something that I learned about the process. But yeah, it's a thing for sure.
Eden, I'm curious, you're speaking at this conference, right? If I was speaking at the conference, I would probably write the speech a dozen times and then change it the night before and possibly in the moment just be extemporaneous because the perfectionism would get to me.
Yeah, that, especially with the 3420 being my only conscious definition, in the moment, if I'm confident, it flows really beautifully and I can share incredible information. And if not, it feels very forced. But I've noticed that I need to prepare like an outline. I need bullet points, but I cannot script the whole thing because if I try and script the whole thing, as soon as I get a teeny tiny detail off, I start like catching my 3420, and it'll be really charismatic and in its performing energy. And then I'll be like, no, you need to like get back on track. You need to like get back to your point. You missed the point. And so it can be very jarring if I'm speaking and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, we're losing track of time or something like that. But I work with 17 and 18 together as pairing partners through the gene keys to really dive into perfectionism in general, because gate 18 is my north nodes in a 3-5 profile kind of configuration. So that's a fun experience. And so I know that like I kind of use like I have some logical affirmations to prove to myself it's good enough as it is. The first one that I like repeat often is perfection is a journey. It's not a destination. We've probably heard that, but I can remind myself like it doesn't have to be perfect right now. It can always improve later. It can always grow later. Another one, I think it's an Albert Einstein quote, and it says something along the lines of perfection is not achieved when there's nothing left that could be added, but when there's nothing left to take away. And so it's saying that whatever you are including is really necessary, and like, yes, you can always do more, but have you done what's necessary in this moment? And then I looked up the definition. I'm very gate 17. What's the definition of perfection? Let me really dive into like what this word means. And perfection is a lot closer to the definition of completion, done, rather than correct or right. And so oftentimes when we think perfection, we're thinking right, and we're really in this good, bad, black and white thinking. And that kind of plays with gate 17, which is the gate of opinions. And it has the shadow of judgment. And so it can be very opinionated and very judgmental. But in those higher frequencies, at the gift frequencies, we're dealing with farsight and integrity. And so if you zoom out, one, your version of perfect is always going to be different than someone else's version of perfect. So no perfect thing actually exists. But that also means that at the same time, everything is perfect. Like nothing is perfect and everything is perfect at the same time. So I will say that out loud, or I will teach it to someone, or I will journal about it to just like remind myself that perfection's a journey. There's always more that could be added. But yeah, it comes up constantly.
Eden, do
Those
you
are
have a
really
defined
fast.
ego?
I do.
So if it's okay if can I manifestor?
Dig.
Yeah, riff on it for
Because
sure.
I have a really fat ego. Like I have a very defined ego. And I'm a single definition splenic manifestor. So I have a totally different perspective on perfection. Perfection to me is not getting in trouble. I mean, I have a repelling aura. I have been in trouble for everything I do, everything I say, everything I breathe on my entire life. So being perfect to me is being insecure like everyone else.
Feel good.
If I feel confident, if I feel strong, if I feel myself, if I feel bold, then I'm imperfect, because most of the population doesn't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, my experience has been this journey of being okay. It's all of these emotional wounds around having a defined ego. I feel like most analysts look at a chart and they see somebody's ego really defined and they think, wow, you're so confident. Wow, you're so bold. No, they're not. They are wounded. They are hurt. Absolutely not. They are so afraid of taking a compliment, of being okay with being themselves, right? Especially as
egotistical.
Looking, and so what I teach my clients is that there's a massive difference between confidence and conceit.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the truth about the ego is it's supportive. And when you have a defined ego, you are a hype man. And you are there to hype everyone else around you. And how come you can't do that for yourself? Because I don't want to get in trouble. And that's what imperfection ultimately is. It's getting in trouble as a manifestor. And so I feel like moving through this thing of imperfection as a 6-2, and I'm a transmitter twice. So I have both 2644 twice in my chart. And so it's moving past the lies and an open emotional system. So it's moving past the lies into the great and deep truth telling. It's the looking at the conversation. It's actually looking at myself and saying, you know what? I am good and I am worthy. I am good at what I do. I love what I do. I support people around me. I'm here to make a good impact. And that's what it means for me to be perfect. It means me being my utmost most truthful version of myself and being okay with being big, even when people don't like me for it, even when I get in trouble for it, even when I get shunned for it, even when I cannot make friends at the age of 37 because I have a closed and repelling aura for it. It means you accept what you are and who you're designed to be because you are perfect in you and in your design. And so it's just such a funny and interesting and beautiful thing to hear the projector and the manifesting generator and the generator and the reflector talk about their experience, and to know that, like, yeah, it's the same, but it's also so different because all of us are, like, we're wearing the same outfit, but we're totally different. Like, you've got long hair, I've got short hair. You know what I mean? Like, we're wearing the same outfit, we're at the same party, but ultimately we really are such different people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Love this, guys. We're looking at love your detriments. Please love them. They're the amazing little salt and pepper and spice, or a little bit of vinegar and horseradish needed to make the thing work. Otherwise, it's not the right recipe. We're all perfect. I love this. You guys, and you're also you're showing it is the thing. This whole perfection thing. I'm watching it unfold, and I'm already recognized. You guys are already like 10 steps ahead. Your level of exactly what Eden, what you were saying. That was a beautiful way to put that, because you went and looked up the word. Yeah, as a national myself, I've had to look up a lot of words in the past 4 years. You know, doing certain things, and I come to recognize it. The words mean a lot, and completion is far more what perfect is, and then less than what gets taken away. If nothing needs to be taken away, it's perfect. It doesn't matter that you'll add stuff later. And I just thought that was amazing. Yeah. And whoever has, no, I think Danielle, one of you had the 3420, and you were like, I got to put that thing in check. Yeah. Don't put it in check. Don't you dare shut that thing up. That's your voice back. Do you guys notice your hermit? That's my favorite line. I love a second line. It's my favorite thing. Do you notice your hermit's natural gifts are almost always noticed, or at least they're projected upon by others, while this role model observer self of yours is always being observed? And I was going to ask, what does that feel like? But I want to qualify this question a little bit, because I'm guessing you'd notice that you're being that you have a projection field of that second line, and people are always checking in on what's this little creature up to. Have you noticed people are always checking on to what's this little creature up to, and what does that feel like? That was it.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. Yeah. I hate being perceived, actually. I am a far left, and I know this isn't like 6'2" thing, but my environment is open in the right. So having all my arrows left, and it might be part of being a 6'2" as well, but I do better like one-on-one. So feeling and being perceived is like not always the most comfortable. I've done lots of podcasts and lots of calls, all this kind of stuff, but I noticed that it does create like this feedback where I'm almost like interconnected with them, even like out in public and stuff. And it's kind of an interesting experience, because people almost sense that, like, at least this is what I think, that we are like observing them, and then they're like, hold on, something's happening. And then they're kind of like watching you too. But yeah, it's just an interesting experience. I don't know if do you guys feel that too, or?
Well, yeah, and it's the line 6 wants to be observed. Our line 6 wants to be seen as a role model. And so it's like, on one hand, when you're living in integrity, when you're being the role model, it's like, it's great. It's like, and I, again, really fat ego, look at me, right? I'm the best, right? But there is always an aspect of wanting to be seen. And then at the same time, I feel that pull. I feel that opposition of when I get really busy, especially as in a rest cycle, right? As a manifestor, where it's kind of like, oh, I can't answer any messages. I don't want to talk to anybody. Leave me alone, right? It's just, it's that, like, I just need to hermit. I need everybody to just fuck off with me. You know what I mean? And so again, it's one of those things I get really fascinated where it's like, well, what do you think? And what do you think? And what do you think? Is it a manifestor thing? Is it a 6-2 thing? But I definitely feel those deep pulls. And for me as a manifestor, I see it happening when I'm in my rest cycle so much more. When I'm in a creative flow, I don't want to hermit at all, right? I'm extroverted. I want to hang out. I want to be with all of the people. But when I find myself cycling back down into that energy, it's like, I just want to hermit away and not talk to. And yet, and still there. And so I'm a 16-2. So they're still calling me out for my talents, for my focus, for my whatever it might be. But then I just don't answer messages.
I'm so good at leaving people on red.
I
On red.
I just can't.
Tom, what about you? You're muted.
Okay, sort of
I
figured
definitely-
out. Sorry.
I definitely noticed this tendency that you guys are discussing, and it's like the more that I want to hermit and be alone, like people then come and bother me or come to me for things. And I've also I was just thinking about it right now as this question came up. I actually like would do this, like I would go to like the same public spaces, and then once I was recognized, like I realized that I didn't want to go there again because I wanted to be hermiting. Like I had like a favorite restaurant that I would go to, and it was like, oh, this is great. I can come here and be alone. And then the restaurant owner started noticing me and like thanking me for coming and talking to me. And then it was like, I don't want to come here anymore. And it was completely genuine on his part. Like he was being fantastic and he was seeing me, but it was like, all right, I got to go find somewhere else where I won't be seen and I can just be alone. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting thing to come into my awareness as hearing this question just now.
But that's never going to happen because the second you stop, they all offer you an invitation. You are a magnet. The second you want to hermit, everybody is just like, oh, Tom.
That is true. Yes, it's definitely how it works in life. Like as I pursue, it never works. But then like as I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go be alone, then all of the requests come, you know. So it's cool to find like a balance because you're like, all right, I like what I need to do will just come to me. I don't need to even worry about it, you know. But it doesn't change the fact that I want to do my own thing, you know what I mean? Because I have my own ideas of what I want to do, but that's clearly all wrong because I'm a mental projector and I'm not supposed to see myself. So anytime I try to make decisions for myself, it's not true. I follow where the invites come.
Let's see. I think I hermit really hard because gate 40, the gate of aloneness, is my unconscious sun. So that's like a big part of my profile is really, really liking that alone time. Let me see. I wanted to say something about this and then I completely forgot. So undefined head center moment. Someone else talk. I'm going to get some water.
Oh my God, did we just witness her hermiting? Did
She just
give
hermited.
us a real
Yeah,
life
she was
example?
like, she's like, I
She
can go
was like,
hermit.
I'm not going to answer this question. I'm going to show this question. That was great.
I'm gonna demo how I hermit.
Eden, for the win.
Example.
I don't like the hermiting. I just you know this. It's not my thing. So I don't like the word. I don't like the experience. I don't like any of it.
Jason, I love you.
It's not fun.
You know what? You're
Tom,
fun.
you're on mute. Are you like?
You're probably fun in real life.
So with somebody that I have a fascination with, like penta energies and formulating penta energies, I like just like say it's been really cool. Like it's been unintentional, but some of you are like popping off and coming back on, and you can literally like sense the energy shift of the room when like a specific person leaves. Like Jason, you were gone for a little bit, and the whole vibe of the space was different when you were gone, and then you returned, and then it's like Jason's energy is back here, you know, and that's really fascinating to me. I've noticed that in group calls, like I try to have like immersion calls, you know, and then like it's like hey, this is really vibing perfectly. And then literally just one person leaves, and it's like now suddenly we don't have a penta, we have a 4 energy. It's a completely different energy. You know, and that's just really, it's really fascinating to me to witness that shift, like every time it happens.
You lived a third line, and then you moved into the 6th line phase, and now we know that that's moving into the Chiron return into this role model thing. Subjective third line, objective middle phase, and then neither in that 6th line phase. How much have you guys recognized that that third line is so foundational to your 6th line? Like, because you guys lived out, promiscuity, danger, whatever it was, risk taking, bumping into things, excitement, sustainment. Just go through all those 6 roles, go through the 8 profiling gates. You lived out all of that in a third line. That's a big deal. 28 years ain't it's not 2 weeks. It's a long time. And so you take this. You could have been pessimistic, but the pessimism stands as the foundation for the optimism. Is the thing. And so just how has it been, and how much do you rely on or do you notice that that third line phase was so more important than having been a 6th line the whole time? That's my question. What have you taken from this third line phase that is now in this more 6th line moving up onto the roof phase with you that seems foundational, where the pessimism, which is a perfect thing to have because it helps you find stuff, becomes the foundation and something you don't need to hang on to as it relates to the optimism? I don't need to hang on to that anymore. I use it. It shows up once in a while. I'm pessimistic. It's great. That means maybe I need to look more. But optimism doesn't always beat out pessimism. And here come you 6 lines giving us a model of what that is for optimism to beat out the pessimism. What's that been like? How does the third line phase foundationalize your 6th line way? If you can even speak to that.
I guess in some way it's weird because you're like, oh, 6th line was 3 line, all the experimentation. But when I look over that period of my life, was I experimenting? I probably had the most stability. I had a very steady job during that time, a very steady family life, massive structure. So compared to where I'm at now, it feels like I wasn't experimenting in anything other than experimenting in stability. So if that was my experiment, so be it, right? But we often think of experimenting as trying so many new things, different things, relationships. I was literally with the same person for 24 years. So there was no experimenting in that sense other than the experiment of 24 years. And, I guess what I'm thinking now is everything that has happened for a reason and a purpose. And this will be revealed as time goes on, because we couldn't all have the same crazy wild life during that experimental phase, because what's the value in that, right? If we are meant to be role models, then we all have to be coming from somewhere different to be a role model to everyone that's out there, right? Because somebody will have had my experience, and maybe I can lend something to that.
Is because I'm a manifestor, but part of it's because I'm a left angle cross of spirit. So my sun is in 55, which is the most melancholy gate of human design. I suffered from severe depression. Not just depression, but I was diagnosed bipolar, as a lot of manifestors are. I suffered severe mental health disorders in my third line phase. Not just bipolar disorder, severe chronic depression, panic attacks, anxiety attacks. I mean, by the time I was 17, I was on 7 separate antidepressant medications. I was in the talk therapy wheel for medications, anything to numb the pain of my mental health disorders. And by the time I went through my first Saturn return, I had contracted such a severe autoimmune disease that I was bedridden. I didn't know if I was going to have it the rest of my life. I mean, and again, I'm a channel of initiation too. So my gate 51 is like, let's shock you into spirit, right? And that's exactly what happened to me. But when I found hypnotherapy, human design, it was when I was going through my first Saturn return. But I'm literally a different person. And I'm one of those 6 line profiles who changed my name. I turned into a different person, and everything I do, the stability of my business, the stability of the transformation that I make with all of my clients through hypnotherapy, through education, through human design, it comes from the foundation of my just horrific experience with mental and emotional instability, imprisonment. I mean, it all comes from my third line trial and error phase, and it's like, yeah, I'm going through what I'm going through right now, but I have the stability, the integrity, the objective viewpoint of a 6 line. Nothing matters now. Literally, none of it matters now, but it all mattered before, to the point where when I have a 6-2 come and work with me through hypnotherapy and they're not through their first Saturn return, I really help them understand that there's only so much we can do for them. Because until they get through that initial Saturn return, it's like, and this is what I say to people all the time, when you're in the middle of a hurricane, that's not the time to call the construction company. When you are in the middle of a hurricane, before you've made it through your first Saturn return, that's the time to let the hurricane destroy the house, destroy the foundation. We can rebuild it once you've made it through. But it all comes from my first. So it's like, I'm an extreme example, I think, of that question.
I think you also represent the contrast then. So you and I have two very different experimental seasons, right? And we bring two very different things to it. You experimented one way, I experimented another way. They're still all experiments.
Yeah. Well, I think that a lot of manifestors, most manifestors in general, are just polarizing people.
Yeah.
So whatever we do is very extreme, one way or the other, you know. And
my kid's a manifestor, and his story sounds almost identical to yours.
Yeah,
actually.
you get it. You
even
do,
him
you
as
totally
a teenager, he is going through it, and it sounds very similar to your experience.
Yeah. Which means he's going to be okay, because I'm like totally okay right now. So he's totally going to be okay.
Tom, Eden, I guess Eden, you're still kind of in the experiment phase, right? So it's hard to speak to this. But Tom, what do you think?
Got something to say?
Yeah, I was just saying, I've seen in myself, I've really resonated with the idea. I think from like 18 to 30 is really where the trial and error phase is prominent most. Like before that is like the developmental phase. And then from 18 to 30, you really push that trial and error. And for me, at that point in my life is where I like really started living as a generator, even though I'm not, and like really just saying yes to everything. And that did like result in like monetary success, but also burnout. And then at my Saturn, really everything did fall apart. You know, it really did fall apart, and it was a reset. And now like my life now is like a mirror of that, but operating correctly instead of as a generator. And definitely what I find is interesting, like with Eden here too, because I've noticed people in that period, like there's kind of like a denial, like maybe this isn't going to happen at all, or maybe nothing's going to happen at my Saturn return. And like there's kind of like a tension that seems building. There seems to be like a push towards that Saturn return, but you don't really know what it is, you know, and it's just going to transpire, and there's no point in really thinking about it. Like there really isn't. Like it is the period to live and really let your life play out. And then when it does, I would imagine that when it does happen, you would just have an explanation, because when it hit me, I was really blindsided by it and like, why the hell is this happening in my life? And if there was that explanation, I'd be like, well, I know exactly what's happening. This is my Saturn return, you know. I'd be like, I guess I can just embrace this change and keep moving, you know. But I got that explanation like shortly after it happened, and then retroactively it made a ton of sense. Like, oh, well, freaking sweet. Like, I guess it was all supposed to happen. So, great. You know, where do we go from here? You know, so. For me, it was definitely just saying yes to everything. I think with my gate of 15 extremes too, I really like sought like out there experiences. Like I was really trying to like, I don't know, do everything at that point. And now a lot more reserved, although sometimes kind of wishing for that era back, because it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've definitely gone through the trial and error. And I feel like I always say that 6-line profiles get a lifetime's worth of experience by their 30th birthday. And I look back and I'm like, I've had multiple careers as a 27-year-old, and that's so strange. But like I was homeschooled until I was 17, very religious growing up. I went to college and like started nursing school, taught myself about evolution while I was there, because I was like, if I'm getting a science degree, I should probably know this. My parents went through bankruptcy, foreclosure, divorce. I have 7 siblings. So it was very chaotic. in my house growing up. I was a competitive gymnast for 9 years. I had a career-ending shoulder injury at 17, enrolled myself in high school where I met my husband. We did the military thing. I got married young. We've moved around a lot. Like, it has been, I quit my job very suddenly. It's been a lot of trial and error. And even in business, like, it grew very, very quickly in the beginning. It like took off extremely fast. And then it like plateaued for a while, and it's gone up and down. We've changed things, and I've retired programs and brought them back and redone them. And there's that perfectionism there. It's like, what's perfect is I'm going to build the whole thing. Did I do it too fast? Do I need to take this away? Actually, that needs to go back in here. So yeah, I almost feel this like the resilience is starting to like run out. Like, I'm starting to get a little bit tired. And I've heard some 6-line profiles talk about like, it's not just once your Saturn return hits, it is this like transition onto the roof a little bit. So yeah, it's been interesting.
So maybe an insight to learn about human design when you're younger gives you permission to experiment, right?
Yeah.
That was something that I didn't have. I didn't have the knowledge of human design, so I didn't have the permission. I'm trying to follow a script, and maybe I'm speaking even more to reflectors. We are so influenced by the others sometimes to the point that we can lose ourselves completely and get onto someone else's program. And that's what I feel like maybe I did during this phase of my life, right? I was given a script by someone else. I followed that script because I thought that's what I was supposed to do, because nobody came along and said, hey, you're in an experiment phase, so just be you during this phase.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's good for young people to learn about human design as soon as they can. I mean, didn't Ra even say it was for the kids? It was
Absolutely.
it's
He would
ultimately
scoop
for the
up,
younger people.
yeah, all the 6-line profiles he could. He would try to
Yeah.
get them before their first Saturn return to
Yeah.
educate them, because it's the objectivity that the 6-line has,
Yeah.
that no other profile can have. And so, Eden, I think that it's so amazing that you have this information before your first Saturn return. And I would love to come and have this same conversation in another 2 or 3 or 4 years and meet the you that you don't even know you're going to be. And that's
especially with an
thing.
undefined G center. And like, it's my Saturn return starts the day Saturn enters Aries in the 12th house in gate 25 in an undefined G center. So it's identity, it's initiation, it's awakening, it's your relationship to your spiritual self. It's like the love of spirit gate. So I feel like it's definitely going to be very like identity transformative. So yeah, it's going to be a spiritual awakening of a whole new level.
Well, please publicly journal and tell all of us with your gate 40, your gate 40 line too. Tell all your private, most inner hermiting secrets. Just kidding. But like, hey, you ever need support through hypnotherapy, Eden?
You got me?
I got you. I got you.